This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. On the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, what happens when you run over something? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Tony Joe's here with me, as he is every Friday, to take your Car Corner questions. The number to call is 1-877-913-5357. 1-877-913-5357. If you got a question for me, you can always go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Just go to the link, send your question in, and I will get that answered for you. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. 1-877-913-5357. Well, Tony Joe, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm good. Once again, I know we say this every time it gets old maybe, but it's Friday once again. It just keeps flying by. And next week, and you know this, it's going to be August.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a
great time of the year.
It is a good time of the year for me, and I know
it's my favorite time of the year
because training camp starts. We're entering August, the last big hot month. Hopefully, it cools down after that, and a lot to look forward to.
You know, September.
I think the Cowboys can go all the way this year. You know, this is my favorite time of the year simply because if you ask me, hey, what do you think about the team? Now, what team? The Cowboys. You mean the undefeated Dallas Cowboys at this point?
You are a typical Cowboys fan who's just desperate for some wins. It's been a long time.
After listening to the owner's comments yesterday, I don't know about you, but I'm excited. I think we could go all the way. I think we're all in.
Yeah, right. 1-877-913-5357. I do have a line open, and I would love to hear from you today. 1-877-913-5357. Well, you know, we've really never addressed this, I don't think. And we've been doing this for a number of years, obviously. But what happens when you run over stuff? And you never intend, there's some things you intentionally just run over them, like, I know that Sherry's not listening, so I can say it, you know, run over railroad tracks really fast or run over speed bumps really fast. No big deal. Doesn't appear to be a big deal anyway.
Well, Sherry, you know, she refers to speed bumps as, hey, that's why they call them speed bumps.
must be that, or in fact, she's from Chicago.
You know, the thing about it that I want to start by saying is the most common sense thing that I can think of talking about this topic, and that is, as we get into what can happen to your car when you do little things that you don't think are a big deal, like hitting certain things or running over things and cutting it too short, running over curbs, things like that. You want to keep one thing in mind. If you're on the highway and you can't avoid hitting something, and it's like, you know, not like a person or anything. I'm talking about something in the road. You're better off running over it than you are to try to, at the last minute, veer left and cause a five-car collision. You know, I mean, I want to just start by saying that. You got to use good judgment, and that's called defensive driving. You're always driving. You're always on the lookout. You're always trying to be careful, aware of your surroundings, aware of what's ahead of you. So keep that in mind first.
You know, to add to that, slamming on the brakes because you've just realized you're going too fast and you're about to hit something.
Yeah, see, you can panic and cause more damage than running over what turns out to be a flattened cardboard box. You know, that you could have run over it. it would have
Right.
been okay. But now there are some things that we do out of habit that we need to try to point out to people, and it's not the end of the world if you do this, but maybe if we talk about it a little bit, people can kind of get some information as to why you don't want to do this. Because as we know, cars are built, I mean, as I know, and I'm going to portray this to the listeners, and that is, cars are not built as heavy duty as they used to be, and there's a reason for that. It's because we have lighter weight cars to try to achieve higher economy standards, gas mileage, and we need to understand that the lightweight cars are built that way on purpose, and because they're lighter weight, they have really beneficial areas in the car called crumple zones, where you will that in crumple zone will absorb the impact if you do have a crash, as opposed to you absorbing it with your forehead on the dashboard, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and the other thing too, which has been a big benefit. Tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong about this. Cars are much safer in big wrecks.
they're light duty compared to what
Which
they
you
used to
wouldn't
be.
think that
but
would
they-
be the case. 'Cause
No.
It's kind of counterintuitive.
That's right. It is counterintuitive. However, the engineering design behind the new vehicles that we have today, the safest cars we've ever had are what we have today.
Yeah.
However, along with that, you got to realize that because they're not, in the 70s, we had steel frames with steel control arms and really solid dashboards and side panels. I mean, it was just a heavier duty vehicle. Because it's lighter duty now, you can damage it easier. Got to be a little more careful with it. You can, for instance, hit a pothole. Now, sometimes it's unavoidable, but sometimes it's not. So if you can avoid it without causing any danger around you, avoid it. But if you hit a pothole deep enough, hard enough, if you're going fast enough, when you go into that pothole, you're really doing considerable damage, or at least stressing to the point of engineering limits, things like the lower control arm, the ball joint, the spindle, the strut itself. You can bend or break any of these items by hitting a pothole hard enough. Now, if you don't break something, oh, by the way, just to mention, you can also separate the tread in the tire. You'll have a tire separation, and you're going to wonder what's the shaking all about. You can damage the wheel, and some of these wheels on cars now, I know some guys on Corvettes and stuff are going to laugh when I say $600-700 a wheel.
Yeah.
Because some wheels are more than that. But, you can do an awful lot of expensive damage when you hit something, so you try to avoid it. Sometimes you can't. But if you can, please do, because you're going to save yourself a ton of money if you could go around that pothole rather than go through it.
Let's go back to the damaging of the tire, because I had that on my mind. And you beat me to it.
Okay.
If what would you have to? How hard would you have to hit an object just dead on to a tire that you could probably? I would assume that the age of the tire plays a big part in it. But what would that look like? How hard would you have to hit something, if that's even possible to say, to where you've done that kind of damage to a tire, and you're probably going to have to replace it because the separated tire is not very safe, right?
Well, in a lot of cases, it's not as hard as you think. For instance, it's the way you affect the tire, not always how hard you hit something, but the angle that you hit it at. For instance, let me just draw a visual real quick. I see it all the time, Bob, and I mention this to you all the time when I come in, and you're tired of listening to it. But as I come in to do the program, I park way out, and then I walk up the sidewalk, and there's cars, all in the parking lot. And I look at them, and for instance, picture this. The car pulls up to the curb, hits the curb, the person puts their foot on the brake, puts it in park, then they let off the brake, And the car is now putting pressure on the tires, which are pushing hard against the curb with no relief because she put it in park, or he did, and the car can't go backwards. So the tires are sitting there under this stress up against the curb. Not, he or she didn't go hit it hard or anything. They just pushed the car all the way up against the curb, put it in park. Now they go in to do their business. A couple hours later, they come out, or sometimes if they work here all day long, the steel belt inside that tire is constantly under pressure. It will bend like a piece of steel, okay? If you do that enough, it'll bend like a piece of steel. When it bends or gets deformed like that, as you drive the car and you expect a nice round tire to be rolling down the road, you've developed this splat spot or possibly fractured the steel belts right there. Now, over time, and not too long either, you're going to start to feel this flopping sound, or you're going to feel it in the steering wheel. Something's not right. The tire seems like there's something wrong with it, or in most cases, people think there's something wrong with my car, when in fact, it's the tire, and it's got a broken belt. Now you've got to get that tire replaced because a broken belt will just get worse and worse and worse and possibly blow out, and you don't want that at 70 miles an hour when you're on LBJ. So it's very easy to damage a tire if you just use your head a little bit. Don't press up against the curb just to make sure you're all the way up there. Who cares? If you think about it, there's a lot of room behind you. Just pull up to where you think it's good. And try not to put pressure on the tires like that. That's one big thing that I see a lot of times right here in this parking lot.
But most of the time, if you've got a spoiler or anything like that, that's going to hit before the tire's going to hit, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, you're going to mess that. You can mess that up as well. But
okay, yeah, but most cars don't sit that way. Now there are some sports cars that you're thinking of that are designed that low. Most cars are not that low. The average person is not driving a car like that.
Right, good point. This is Bob Brooks, 1-877-913-5357. Have the line open. Give us a call. We're up against the break. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Peace at any price. That's what so many call for as they attempt to bring an end to violence between nations. But what does God's Word say? Well, hop aboard the Bible bus this week as Dr. J. Vernon McGee explains what peace at any price really costs. I'm Steve Schwetz, your host, and I'll save a seat just for you.
Listen daily, 6:30 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. So let me ask you a question. Do you know your numbers? Now, which numbers are those? They are your retirement numbers. That set of numbers is the single most important planning numbers you can know. Yet the majority of Americans don't even know them. Prudent Money Financial Services, sponsor of the Prudent Money Radio Show, specializes in figuring out those numbers and creating a game plan to make sure you're on the right track. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3. Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. 1-877-913-5357. You know, you're talking about the things that you can damage by running over something. We're talking about and you're right, tires are very expensive. At the very least, you scrape them, and that can be fixed, but it's not a cheap fix, but there's a fix for that. But I mean, if you bend one of those wheels, is that an automatic replacement, or can those wheels be bent back into shape?
There are people in the city that can repair wheels. However, you got to have it damaged in a certain way, if it's, if it's bent, like you're thinking, I mean, when they break or crack, they can be repaired. But if they're bent to the point where they can't be repaired, then yeah, you got to replace the wheel. And I don't know, the people that have done it know. The people that don't realize it, those wheels are expensive now. Wheels are not
But I don't.
steel wheels from a junkyard for $20 a pop anymore.
But realistically, if you think about someone buys a sports car and they're expecting the wheels to be expensive, they accept that the wheels are expensive because they want that sports car.
Right.
Those wheels probably aren't that much more expensive than what goes on normal SUV. Is that a safe?
It is.
So in other words, they're
yeah.
a little bit overpriced. Now they're probably lighter, different material that's a little bit more expensive, but
Yes, all these things that you're saying are true, and the aspect of what wheels you order with the car can also make a difference. So a lot of people will order wheels of a certain type for the car, and they can be a little pricey. So it depends on what's on the car, but generally speaking, all in all, I'm going to say that all wheels are expensive now, all of them.
yeah.
Way more than a person would think.
But I guess the point is that they can get away with charging those prices because people are going to spend that money. Because
Yes,
you're not
yeah,
thinking
no,
of
they will.
when you originally buy that sports car. You're not thinking about what damage am I going to do to these wheels.
Right. No, probably not. If you can afford it, I don't think that's going to bother you that much. But for the average person who's just driving a normal SUV or something, you got to consider, you got these nice, well, they're usually nice. Usually most wheels today have some kind of a design in them or...
Selling feature.
Yes, attractive wheels, and they're expensive. But when you break one or bend one or ruin one somehow, you say, well, look, man, that's expensive. What are my options? Well, your options are to buy a plain Jane steel wheel, but that's going to be, odd man out. You're going to have 3 nice wheels and 1 ugly one. You can't do that. So, yeah, you have to replace it.
Okay, so I'm going to give you...
I would do that, but nobody in their right mind would do that.
I'm going to give you a scenario.
Okay.
You're driving, just enjoying your day. Then you realize you saw the roundabout coming, but you don't realize how close you are to the left or the right, and you run up over that roundabout. What kind of damage can you do? Because what's worse about that is that's a little bit longer of a
Yes.
path
Right.
off of that roundabout. And then if you can explain to me, people who use that roundabout every day, why don't they show any grace to those of us who don't use the
How about
roundabout?
how about some manners for the people that aren't used to it? Well, thank goodness we don't live in Europe because there's not that many roundabouts here. But I hear they're all over.
Is that where they came? Is that where the
I-
idea came from?
I guess
it makes
so.
no sense to me. But
Yeah, the point about what you're trying to portray is a visual of somebody entering something that's strange to them, like a roundabout. There's a few of them around here. Yeah, I mean, I know of a few of them, but you're going into a roundabout and you're not used to it, and you get a little nervous. You go, oh, how does this thing work? And you go around, and you may run over the curb. Let's say with the back wheel. Okay, let's just say you cut it too close and you ran up over the curb with the back wheel, and you were only going 20, 25. Okay. Well, the first thing you're going to hit is the steel belts in the tire. Let's hope it didn't damage anything, but it very certainly could have at that speed. With that, I'm picturing a curb 4 inches high. I mean, yes, you can damage the tire alone. If you hit it hard enough, you could damage the tire and the wheel. So there you go right there. Now, if you did enough damage, if you hit it hard enough to damage the tire or the wheel, let's look at the rest of the car. What do you think the rest of the car with that kind of shock absorption, or let me just say impact, is going to do to the suspension system? You could have bent a strut. You could have bent...
But you would know that, wouldn't you?
Well, you wouldn't at first, because unless you're a pretty good mechanic, what you would notice is your car seems to pull one way or the other, or seems not right in some way. It's driving different than it used to. So, you say, well, I hit that curb. It seems to be driving different. Maybe I ought to have it checked out. And then you get, you take it to a garage and they put it up in the air to survey the damage, and they find out that you just did $1,200 to $2,000 worth of damage underneath the back right where you went over that curb.
Well, let's say that you don't go over the curb in the back of the wheel. You go from the front end over the roundabout. So you're scraping pretty much your bottom of your car until the back wheel leaves the roundabout.
Okay, well, in that case, you could put an excessive amount of pressure on the front end of the... You see, Bob, as the wheel, you're trying to turn the wheel one way, and the wheel is being forced the other way by the cement curb. The cement curb is going to win that battle. So You're pressing one way, the cement curb is trying to guide the wheel in another direction. You're going to put excessive pressure on all the front end parts. The power steering rack and pinion assembly is what most cars have. They're not that heavily built. You can probably expect to damage it. Tie rod ends. Same thing in the front end. You've got lower control arms, ball joints, and struts and shocks. There's all kinds of things under there that are susceptible to that kind of pressure because the cars are so lightweight today and light duty compared to what they used to be, that yes, you could damage any or all of that stuff in a scenario like you're trying to, I know what you're doing. You're trying to paint a visual for the people so they can kind of, do you do this? Do you do that? I mean, anything like that. Yeah, you can do a lot of damage really fast. These cars are not heavy duty like the old Mercuries in the 60s. You've got to be careful, and that's all you got to do is be a little more careful. It can cost you a ton of money if you're not. So keep that in mind, that we're trying to get you to be aware of the facts. Information is what you need. The cars are lightweight today. There's a good reason for it. And because they are lightweight, the price you're paying is you got to be a little more careful not to hit curbs and hit things if you don't have to, because it won't take a lot of abuse. Because just like an accident, so many people go, how could I have $5,000 worth of damage? I wasn't even going 5 miles an hour. Well, that's why, because we have crumple zones, and the car is made to fold up like an accordion so that you get out of the car and are able to call your parents or your kids and say, hey, I'm fine, but I need a ride home.
We mentioned speed bumps a while ago. Mm-hmm. The design of a speed bump, is it really? What are the chances of if you hit that going pretty quick, 40 miles an hour, let's say?
Okay.
Well, that'd be too fast.
Well, I mean, I've seen people do it.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they're designed? They're not designed to tear up your car.
Well, they're not designed for that purpose. They're designed to slow you down, because if you see speed bumps, there's probably children in the area, or whatever the reason the speed bumps are there. There's a good reason for it. So what happens if you hit them going too fast? Well, the thing that can happen if you hit a speed bump going too fast is the automatic pressure that you went from a smooth road to collapsing the suspension as the car runs over the speed bump. The suspension will collapse into itself, thus the spring collapses, or compresses, I should say. The shock compresses, and all the things that push the front end together are all under a great deal of stress. Not as bad as hitting a pothole, but still stressing to the point at different speeds where you're testing the engineering limits of the light-duty car that you're driving, so to speak. So what you got to do is understand that any big changes in impactful things like a speed bump can damage your car. What will it damage? It depends on a lot of factors. But you got to slow down, because just use common sense. I mean, a speed bump is there for a reason, and there's probably kids in the area, and if you're going to speed over speed bumps, then you're going to damage your car, and you probably are going to have to pay a lot of money, and next time, slow down.
So I wouldn't think that running over a railroad track that fast is going to do much damage.
Well, the thing about railroad tracks, here's the thing about railroad tracks. Unless they're perpendicular exactly to the road surface.
Right, you're still hitting something.
Well, you're not only hitting
not,
something, but they're usually at an angle. So if you think about the two front tires on your car, and you're approaching some rough railroad tracks, one of them's going to hit first. That's the problem. It'll knock it out of alignment. You're hitting one without hitting the other with even pressure.
This is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.